He doesn't seem very impressive.
I'm not falling for it. I'm not going to buy it. There you go.
Well, another team that has been seriously unimpressive during this free agency period is one America's team, and that's the Dallas Cowboys. Very, very quiet in free agency. Obviously lost a few players to the cap. Really, they are now in the cap. They've got $7 million to work with in the cap. They've only brought in Rico Dowdle. They re-signed him on a 1-year deal. They brought in Eric Kendricks from the Chargers. Brought in Jordan Lewis, who I believe is going back there after being somewhere else on a 1-year deal, and re-signed a free agent, Trent Sieg, that's the I think he's a special teams player.
Long snapper.
Long snapper, so special teams player. And then on their free agents, they've lost Dorrance Armstrong, Tyler Beardash, Tony Pollard, Tyron Smith. Yes, they did re-sign Jordan Lewis. I didn't think he got anywhere else. Now, Neville Gallimore, they've lost. Noah Igbenogany, Dante Fowler as well, who's only on I believe, only short-term deal anyway. Michael Gallup has gone. Stephen Gilmore, Jaron Kearse. Jonathan Hankins, Chuma Edoga has gone as well. They've really been very, very uninteresting, considering they're a team that most people find quite interesting. I think they're quite polarizing in that way of people either think they're great or really, really don't want to support them. And it's sort of a little bit on no one really sits on the fence, do they, Johnny? Everyone's either very anti-Cowboys or very pro-Cowboys, it always feels like. But they've been very late to the party.
Yeah, they have. I think every year we see Jerry Jones and, he says something and you believe that the Cowboys are, well, I do anyway, I'm going to go and do something, but it never happens. But I think here they've lost players that obviously they're building up to save money for Dak. We'll come back to that later because I'm unfortunately, very, very on the fence on Dak, but they're saving money for him, Parsons, and Ceedee Lamb, and they've got rid of, or they've lost, quite bit players, and I think they're easily replaceable. So I'm actually not too, they've been very inactive, and for a team that has Super Bowl ambitions, yes, they've got limited cap to work with. It's not what you want to see, but I don't think that the losses. Perhaps up front Tyron Smith, a good addition for the Jets, but they're starting center perhaps, but I think they usually can work around their offensive line. They have, I think, decent depth, so I'm not too worried about it in that sense. I think it's a team that finished the season so negatively. I think obviously a lot of fans wanted them to, do something, I think, before the draft, perhaps, to continue that strain of thought, and it hasn't happened yet. So disappointing, but in my eyes, I don't think being all quiet is as negative as it looks. But we'll see, what they do in the draft and where they go, because, there are possibly, a few areas where they could go in the draft. So interested to see what they do.
We'll stick on the quarterback talk, I suppose, Andrew, because when I'm looking, I've been trying to get it so I can see the cap for this year and then the rolling years. So at the minute, the minute Dak's cap hit for 2024 is $55.5 million. It goes down to $40.5 million in 2025. I believe then after that, it goes to 12 million 2026, $1 million 27 million 28, which I'm sure it will get moved around, restructured, and changed in places where it all gets loosened around. In fact, what year does this contract even go to?
Well, they need to make a decision. They need to make a decision this year on Dak, don't they? Because if they want to move some money for this year, because they haven't got enough. I believe Adam will be able to confirm this for me. They haven't got enough to sign all the rookies, have they? I don't think, if they want to do anything in that respect. So if they want to do anything or bring anybody in or even pick some people up on the waivers or whatever it is, they need to restructure Dak's contract. And in order to do that, they're going to have to say, do we want to buy into him for the future? And what that's going to do is move big chunks of money from this season for them, but next season they're going to be in a bit of trouble. And then if it doesn't work out for the future for him, and like we said, they've got to sign Ceedee, Lamb and Parsons as well. So the cap for them down the line is going to get worse. And like I say, do they want to buy in and say, yes, Dak is the guy for us for the next 3 or 4 years? Because that's what it's probably going to look at. And you saw last time when he had to re-sign a contract, he wanted no trade clauses. He wanted no tag clauses. He wanted to be the highest paid quarterback. And Jerry Jones has got a thing where it's really odd way to run a business. He drafts people in, he keeps them, and then he just pays all his own guys loads of money, and then they're just struggling and have to cut people that they could do with keeping. So yeah, we've seen this before where he overpaid Amari Cooper and Zeke and so on and so forth. So he's put himself in a bit of a tough situation going forward, which is where I am quite worried about them, because he said he was all in for 2024 in January, and then decided let's just not have any running backs at all. So Adam looked like he's ready.
Because the all-in wasn't all-in, was it? It wasn't all in as though we believe all in to be. The all in was that basically we're all in on Dak and the players that we've got from last year for this year. So we're not going to go out and spend. I've never known them as big spenders. Like I don't really know them as big free agency spenders. They do a lot in the draft, and they do a lot, like you say, they sign their guys up, and that's what they do. They always have done. So I'm not really that shocked by it, to be honest. They can pay.
Sorry to interject just a moment, just because I'm now understanding this table a little bit more of the salary. So he does become a free agent in 2025. They do have it. They can have a potential out of this year, but it would be a dead cap hit of 66 million, nearly 67 million. So yeah, he's a free agent in 2025. I mean, Adam, carry on with what you're saying, but then by that point, you're looking at paying Ceedee, Lamb,
and Parsons.
And sorry,
Parsons,
and Parsons, and he's he's 32.
Yeah, this is the problem, isn't it? It's very difficult. I mean, they can afford to pay their rookies. They have got enough at the moment. I don't know what they've done, but they've obviously done something. The only two teams at the moment that can't are the Falcons and your Giants, Andrew. Everyone else can afford to pay for their rookies at the moment that they draft. But yeah, it's really difficult. I'm not shocked that they haven't done much. I've never really felt of them as a team that really go out and do a lot in free agency, but they have got some really big contracts that they're going to have to pay for coming up. And so Parsons, you kind of feel like that's a given, and Ceedee Lamb, you kind of feel like is a given. Now Dak is
not only is it a given, you're going to think that both Ceedee Lamb's going to want what Justin Jefferson's getting, so he's going to want to be the highest paid wide receiver. Yeah. And Parsons is going to want to be the highest paid edge rusher. Mm-hmm. So they're going to be in all sorts of bother. And I think it's
also as if Micah Parsons, he's technically free as of 2026. So is he going to be wanting it? He's going to want it sooner rather than later, isn't he? In a position like his.
And isn't Lamb the same year?
No, Lamb's next year. And Parsons is the year after.
So yeah, it's really tough. I mean, there's a lot of big decisions that they've got to make, and it just feels like that Dak isn't the one out of the three. It feels like Dak is the one who doesn't get the deal, because he's already had the deal, and he's kind of hasn't really proven his worth in that respect. It's like at the end of the day, for a team like the Cowboys, getting in the playoffs and losing isn't enough, is it? You know, that's not the idea. That's not what Jerry Jones is after. So it kind of feels like, why would you keep going down the same route in that respect?
I mean, when you look, I'm looking at the total contract, I suppose. So this doesn't really, it sort of tells when it expires and stuff like that. But Dak at the mid contract terms, 160 million for 4 years, obviously expires in 2025. Trayvon Diggs, 97 million for 5 years, expires in 2029. Terrence Steele, the tackle, 82.5 million, 5 years, 2029. Michael Gallup, they've got rid of now, I believe. They've cut him early to save money. DeMarcus Lawrence, 3 years, 40 mil, expires next year. Brandon Cooks, 2 year, 39 mil, 2025 as well. Zach Martin, 2 year, 36, coming up to 37 mil, comes in next year. This could look like a really new team in a year's time, couldn't it?
Yeah, not only is it going to look like a new team, but in terms of when we've been talking about where their weaknesses have been in the past, when we said the O-line has struggled, they're now moving their left guard to left tackle. They need to address that in the draft. And if that's the case, I've said they're one injury away on the O-line to not being able to perform for the season. I mean, touch wood, nothing happens. But looking at what they've got on that offense now, if anything happens to Ceedee Lamb, can any of you see them being able to compete in any way, shape, or form? Because outside of Lamb, they've got Jake Ferguson, who looks good, and that is it. And they've got that many holes that they need to address O-line and things in the draft. They can't get weapons. They can't afford to go out and get T. Higgins. They couldn't afford to join in the running back free agency. And I'm just worried. Well, I'm not worried because I hate the Cowboys, but I'm worried in terms of things that when you look at the fact that what the Commanders have got and how they're building and their cap space and going forward, they're going to be getting better. The Eagles and Howie seem to be able to just get better every year and move pieces and work things well. Will we see the Cowboys? This is what I asked all of you. Will we see the Cowboys slowly starting to slip behind these and not be able to build on 12-5 and maybe regress and go the wrong way?
Personally, I think they'll probably carry on because I reckon Lamb will just be all right. This is the thing. But I do agree, if he wasn't, then it's serious problems sort of thing. The offense is basically Dak to Lamb. And, they came out and said, didn't they, that they wanted to run the ball more. And I think they did run the ball more, but it didn't really do much. And they worked out that, obviously Lamb was the reason that it worked and got them to the playoffs, and they did so well pretty quickly. So it's one of them things, isn't it, where it's almost like they're going to go and get running backs in the draft. That's feels like a given now. They need to go and get a wide receiver, I'd argue. But then, like you say, there's O-line. I mean, there's loads of issues here. I suppose you could argue that where a lot of these needs are, the draft is quite strong in them positions. So that might help them this year.
Well, what's their draft capital for this year? That'd be interesting to see. Let's have a look at that. I'll have a look at that, Johnny, while you give your opinion.
No, I was just going to say that I think the point about teams around them getting better, like, the Commanders were, a bit of a dumpster fire at points last season, but they've dominated free agency really. And, I suppose brought in, a lot of veterans, but, plays like Frankie Lavu, obviously Austin Eckler coming off a bad year. They've really built themselves up to add a quarterback in a good spot. So the Eagles as well, the Giants have made a few moves, but yeah, I think it's going to be a lot more difficult this year than it was last year, I think, for the Cowboys, because of their divisional rivals, getting better. I'm not sure what the rest of their schedule's like, but I mean, the Cowboys are always there and there. I think will always be there and thereabouts with Dak in terms of getting into the playoffs. It's just about finding that that next level, and at the moment they can't do that because of constraints elsewhere.
You really think Dak's the one that takes them? Do you think Dak's the one that takes them? I know Ceedee Lamb's great, but for me, that is a little bit of whittling down the argument. Is Dak really all that worth it? I don't think when he got paid that much money, he was worth it in the first place. I think you can't argue he's decent, but but could you argue everyone would look decent with Ceedee Lamb? It's the same with Justin Jefferson in Minnesota. Will everyone look decent with Justin Jefferson in Minnesota? I think. I mean, this year they've got the first round pick 24, second round, third round. They've got a compensatory 5th and 6th and 2 7th round picks. I think it has to make sense for they trade a big player. I think it has to make sense for them to trade down or trade a big player, because wanted to get the picks to be able to fill the holes like we were saying and to sort of anticipate it. I think they moved down. I think they would move down from 24 personally. I think they don't go far, but I think it has to make sense. It would be cheaper for them. They can maybe get something next year in the second round or even second round pick this year as well as maybe sticking in the first round area. They need more pick. They need to get cheaper. They absolutely have to get cheaper. And the only way they can do that is moving down draft picks, cutting people at the end of next year, and also maybe potentially trading one of their bigger players to get that money off the books eventually, and also to gain some draft capital to be able to strengthen. I have to say that is what they are good at. They do tend to draft really well. So as much as I would love the idea of this team just crumbling, because I'm not a huge Cowboys fan, to be honest with you, I can't see it happening because they are very good in the draft, and I don't think they are afraid to move big, to make big statement moves either. And I think they're pretty all in on Micah Parsons and Ceedee Lamb being the face of their franchises and not Dak, to be honest. So I don't think they do. The problem is they have not got better when everyone else around the league has got better this free agency. They've probably been one team that hasn't. And that's where it gets difficult, isn't it? Because when everyone's chomping at the bit and coming after you, that is when you're going to have the target on your back. And I think now the Cowboys are a team that has a target on the back because of their success of last year, and the season before they did pretty well as well. So I don't think they're going away, because I think they still draft so well, and they're going to be able to get good players in there. But it's going to be really interesting to see where they sort of go from here, though.
If you were a QB needy team like the Vikings, would you be making calls to go for Dak? Because personally, I wouldn't. But
no, I don't think you would because of the cost.
Yeah,
I think most people that would put most people off. It's just too much money.
Well, if we look at the table, I mean, the only reason the teams at the top of the board, Commanders, the third pick in the draft, taking a quarterback. Second pick in the draft, taking a quarterback. Patriots, third pick in the draft, probably going to take a quarterback. Titans got their quarterback of the future in Will Levis, we feel like. The Chargers got Justin Herbert. Eagles got Jalen Hurts. Bengals got Joe Burrow. Cardinals, Kyler Murray. You could argue if you weren't totally in Kyler Murray, maybe, but I doubt it. Raiders, again, they've got quite a high draft pick. Do you really want to do that? They've got the money to be able to do it. The Bears definitely ain't going to do it. The Lions definitely ain't going to do it. The Packers definitely ain't going to do it. You get to like the Rams. He's not going to go back up Matt Stafford, and Stafford's on a big contract. I think Rams are at 23 mil at the minute, effective 19 mil cap space. So really, you're looking at I don't know how much the movement it would all be, but if really, there's no market to trade for him. No market, I don't, in my eyes. Well, I say my eyes, and also with maybe my poor maths as well. I'm sure if we've actually sat down and moved some numbers around and actually looked at effective space and who would take on this, that, and the other, that would be a lot more fun to see. And we are nearing the end of our fantastic show this evening.